Hey, what's going on, Trojan family? What is up? Welcome to the USC LAFB show. I am Ryan Dyrud, breaking down all things USC Trojans and a lot of news to get to. Good to be with you guys. Thank you all so much, as always, for supporting. I certainly appreciate it. We appreciate the coach, the madman, all of us here at the LAFB network. If you have not already, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, USC LAFB. Easy to find. On podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, you can just search Salute to Troy, or everything can be found on our website, lafbnetwork.com. This show, this program, always brought to you by our friends over at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. All the best money lines, game spreads, and guess what? The big game, the Super Bowl, is coming up. If you're like me, I love all the prop bets. You know, what's the color of the Gatorade going to be? Over, under of the national anthem, or if you want to just stick to betting to the game, BetOnline's got you covered. They have every other sport imaginable. Even July is still far away, but hey, if you like the hot dog eating contest, you can bet on the hot dog eating contest here in just a few months. So everything at betonline.ag. Tell them the guys at the LAFB network sent you. So USC in the news again, and for all the right reasons. You know, since we last spoke, we did our live show over the weekend. Coach was back, which was great. Madman was back, which was great. We broke down Chad Bowden, the new general manager, home run hire. Absolutely. So I don't need to get into that. But they've added now 2 player personnel pieces. One is, I think they're both pretty much confirmed, but one is a more hard confirmation, I guess, from the actual university, I would say. But I think both have been confirmed. One was broken by Football Scoop, and then 247 also reporting on it. And the other has been reported of this morning by 247 and other outlets, including us here at LAFB Network. So 2 personnel hires, which I'll talk about quickly, and just what this means, not only the prowess they're bringing to the program, but also kind of what this shows that Lincoln Riley and Jen Cohen are doing surrounding the football program. Another coaching hire as well, cornerback coach. So we'll break that down. And then finally, this weekend is Junior Day. And there are a smattering of big name recruits that will be on campus at USC, and a huge opportunity for Lincoln Riley and his entire staff with these new additions to the staff to lock down some of these recruits. And, you know, it's January. Junior Day will be technically February. And these all of these are 26 and 27 as a Junior Day. So recruits for the next recruiting class. So it's a long year to keep these guys committed, but it's a huge opportunity to just show the program, get some guys fired up. I would not be surprised if they get a couple commits after this weekend. So anyway, we'll talk that at the end of the show. All of it will be rather quick and short. We don't need to go too crazy length here. But wanted to get back with you guys, get in front of the mic, get in front of the camera, and break out things down USC. So let's get into it. First, as I mentioned, broken that 2 director of player personnels at their respected universities are joining USC on the same staff. You're taking 2 people who were director of player personnel coming into similar roles. I don't know who will be they haven't announced who will be the titled director of player personnel, if they'll both be the same title, if one will be director of player personnel, one will be executive director of recruiting. For those who don't know, the great Annie Hansen, the wife of offensive line coach Zach Hansen, stepping down as the executive executive director of recruiting to focus on their family. You know, they just had a newborn baby, beautiful baby boy, and so focusing on that. So that role, in a way, is open. So it'll be curious to see if one of these hirings will kind of take on that role in terms of kind of how they build recruiting and the recruiting visits, the official visits and all that, and taking care of the families. And the other will be based on, you know, the player personnel side, if they'll be kind of combined. So a lot of that stuff will come out, and we'll obviously let you know. But anyway, let's just get into the hires. So first, announced on, what day are we today? On Tuesday evening, or maybe even been last night, Wednesday. I think they came both like one after another. Annie Hansen announced that she was stepping down on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday evening is when Football Scoop broke that USC would be hiring from Notre Dame Zaire Turner, who is the director of player personnel at Notre Dame underneath Chad Bowden. Huge hire because this is the person directly underneath Bowden, worked hand in hand over the last year. She was just promoted to the DPP position a year ago. And so you get someone that is obviously very familiar with Chad Bowden, has worked with him, came up in the ranks at Notre Dame, and someone who, helped build this Notre Dame Fighting Irish program to make a national title run. And so just another young, bright mind in kind of the recruiting NIL world that is now being added to the USC landscape and the USC front office. John Bryce, Football Scoop, writes in the breaking news, multiple sources in the Midwest tell Football Scoop Wednesday that Bowden is hiring away Notre Dame Director of Player Personnel Zaire Turner into a key role of similar stature within the USC program. Another home run get, whether this was Bowden basically when he was getting hired saying, hey, I need people that I know on my staff as well. Whether it was Lincoln Riley pushing, like, do we need to fill, like, how do we fill these other roles? You remember just 2 weeks ago, Dave Emmerich his title basically was GM / director of player personnel in a way. Like, there wasn't a true person in that role. Like I mentioned, Annie Hansen was kind of on the recruiting side, executive director of recruiting, and all these are titles. Like, they all kind of work hand in hand. But you're saying just 2 weeks ago, there was one guy handling the responsibilities essentially of a GM and a director of player personnel, and no disrespect, but not doing it well, to now he has been moved to the chief of staff role, which is probably best for him, managing the staff, something that he is good at. You have this bright, rising star GM, Chad Bowden, and you brought with him his right-hand person, Zaire Turner, who was the director of player personnel at Notre Dame. And, oh, by the way, now announced this morning, have hired another director of player personnel that had previously worked with Bowden, Dre Brown from Illinois, another Big Ten, plucking from the Big Ten, who was the director of player personnel for Brett Bielema at Illinois just last year. Illinois alum. So this shows the staying power that USC has, but also the excitement and respect that I think Chad Bowden has already gotten. The fact that he had two former employees, one that was with him last year at Notre Dame, one that was with him at Notre Dame previously. Dre Brown was formerly there, then he got hired last year as the director of player personnel at Illinois, to both leave their respected roles to come to USC to essentially do the same thing. Now, I'm guessing there was probably a pay raise in there. USC certainly is shelling out. But that shows the power of the USC brand is still very real. Money talks, obviously. You got to pay the salary as well, but the brand is very real. And the hiring of Chad Bowden brings with him the respect of that. And now I can just confirm, USC football just tweeted welcoming Zaire Turner and Dre Brown. So both are officially on staff. Perfect timing in the USC program. Let's see, since this is happening in real time as I'm not live recording, let's see if they announce the official titles or not. It says, please welcome Zaire Turner and Dre Brown to our personnel / recruiting staff. So you have Turner is the assistant AD of recruiting operations, and Dre Brown is the executive director of scouting and personnel. So, fancy titles, but essentially managing recruiting and player personnel efforts underneath Chad Bowden. This is a huge front office. I mean, we talked about on the show not too long ago about how, in college football today, you really need to construct your front office similar to an NFL. It doesn't have to be exact, but similar in this new era of NIL and contracts and agents and third-party managers and all this stuff. You need to have the wherewithal of your front office. Whereas in the past, it was the coaching staff did all of that, and then you had a director of player personnel that helped with recruiting efforts and would stage the official visits and follow up on certain things. But now it's like you have all these other moving parts that it's become it's always been a business, but now it's become a true business where the players are getting paid as well. So you need to construct your front office to keep up. USC in this Lincoln Riley era, each year has made steps to get with the times, but it always felt like they were a step behind. Like when Lincoln Riley was hired by Mike Bowden, this is not me making it up. Like Mike Bowden did not really believe in the NIL area. It was brand new. And he was not really for, like, they launched Boulevard as like a pseudo collective, but he wasn't really supportive of it or backing it. And obviously Boulevard flopped within a year. So Lincoln Riley came, his AD at the time did not really have the vision of what NIL was going to become. No one really did, but he wasn't really putting the resources in that. Well, then he resigns. You end up hiring Jen Cohen. She seems to be very forward-thinking in that regard, but it was still, okay, the focus then was on the collective. How do we make the collective better? And how do we actually fundraise and have the money needed to allocate to football to be able to pay these players enough to make us a competitive football program? And so then last year, the collective did a 180. House of Victory merged with Conquest, and the money pot grew, and it seemed like the allocation was a lot better. But the management side of the recruiting, the front office, the contracts, all that was still a mess. Now they've addressed that, and now the front office, you could argue, is the best in college football. When you talk about based on just rising star, probably top 5 GM in Chad Bowden. I don't think anyone would argue that. When you look at just kind of the complex of who the true kind of GMs are, what programs are putting staying power in the general manager and in the context of the role. I mean, he's a rising star. He's 30 years old. He's going to be 31. And then you add 2 rising stars that were director of player personnel, both of them to come in similar roles with fancy titles, but to do the same kind of work, all on the same staff. It's impressive. It's impressive. And now Lincoln Riley has everything he needs to be successful. Now he's just got to close the deal and win ball games. Because he had this front office, not even being biased, is probably second to none. It's large, and it's all rising stars within the game. Young, can relate to players, which I still think is extremely important. Dre Brown played college. I mean, he's only 27 years old. Turner is extremely young as well, a rising star through the Notre Dame ranks. Like I said, Bowden only 30. This is our Skinny T wrote this earlier today for when Brown was hired. He's a former standout running back for the Illini. He brings a unique blend of playing experience and recruiting acumen to Los Angeles, a former team offensive MVP just in 2019, not that long ago. He returned to his alma mater in 24 to work alongside general manager Pat Embleton as a key member of Brett Bielema's recruiting staff, and now joining USC. So, absolutely, just these are fantastic hires. There's a lot that should be excited about, and it's perfect timing because of what is coming up this weekend. Getting the staff fully done. I know a lot of people are like, well, you missed the transfer portal window. You could have done this before signing day. And I don't disagree. When we talked about back in August, when USC made an effort for Courtney Morgan, the GM in Alabama, and he ultimately turned them down to stay where he was and with the coach that he knew. USC then put that search on hold right in the middle of the season. I'm not saying they shouldn't have continued searching throughout the season, but you're kind of focused on then and there. There's still so much going on with your current team, game planning, prepping, getting your players ready, still recruiting. You still have to be recruiting. And so might have not been fair to expect Lincoln Riley and the staff to do a full-on GM search during the season. So I think we had kind of knew after Morgan was turned it down that it was going to be pushed to the offseason. And it still probably took longer than people wanted because you do miss that December 4th early signing day, which is obviously so important. You do miss the transfer portal. But I think knowing that you, for now, you still have this spring transfer portal window. I mean, you get the staff before. I think the thought was always get the staff and everything in place before that, because a lot of kids are going to jump back in the portal in the spring. Some kids that even were in the portal in the winter, I'm not saying I love this, but kids that were in the portal in the winter, committed, they could jump right back in it with this new staff and all that they're able to do, and not saying anything to do with tampering, but there's that opportunity as well. So perfect timing, getting it done now before this weekend, Junior Day, for them all to be on campus in this recruiting effort for the 2026 class. Quickly, before talking about this weekend, do have to mention the last hire they made on another elite hire. Just a few days ago, Trovon Reed, formerly cornerbacks coach at UCF, former player, really highly recruited 5-star player, coached at UCF just last year, cornerbacks. I shouldn't say both, but 2 of his cornerbacks are in the Senior Bowl. He's the only position coach with 2, or the only cornerbacks coach with 2 players at the Senior Bowl. Arguably the most respected kind of all-star game. So monumental coaching there. He was the coach of Chasen Johnson, who Trojan fans might remember, was committed to USC for about 2 days before then committing to SMU, before then ultimately ending back up at UCF. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but just throwing it out there with Reed now on staff, who's to say he doesn't jump in that spring portal, like I just mentioned, and then recommits to SC if SC would still want him. Obviously a very talented player, I believe just a freshman, going to be a sophomore. So if they wanted to add more depth to that secondary. So Reed, I think another great coach, great recruiter is the word on the street. Just heard nothing but that he's a fantastic recruiter and relationship builder, which has become the theme of this staff. When you look at Eric Henderson, when you look at Chad Savage, the tight end coach, when you look at now Reed, when you look at Dan Lynn, Doug Belk, Rob Ryan obviously is going to be a little newer to the game of recruiting, being in the NFL for so many years. But even Zach Hansen, I think, is a very underrated recruiter now. The O-line coach was tight ends, but he's recruited very well. Dennis Simmons has been a very underrated wide receiver recruiter. So that's the theme of got to have good coaches, but got to be great recruiters and relationship builders. And that's the staff that Lincoln Riley now has. And Reed is a great implement on that. Now, I do want to say this is no indictment on Doug Belk, nothing coming for his job. If you remember, Taylor Mays was kind of in this somewhat role. I can't remember if he was actually technically the cornerbacks coach. I know he was upgraded to a larger role than he was just as an analyst last year. I can't remember if he was the true cornerbacks coach because obviously he played safety. But he obviously went up to Washington to become a coach on their staff, so this more fills that piece of him leaving while also adding the recruiting element that Taylor Mays hadn't really kind of adapted to yet so early in his coaching career. So another great getting Trovon Reed on this staff. Again, in time now for this big-time Junior Day this weekend. And so we'll end the show with this. Hey, what's going on, family? Got to quickly tell you about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, new sponsor and friend of the show. One of the most fun games out there, fantasy games you can do in the industry today. Super easy to do. Go to the App Store or go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Download today. Use our promo code LAFB, or you can just click the link in the description wherever you are watching. That promo code is going to give the new user that you have just become a free pick, one free pick, and up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's free money. Up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Why would you not want to do that for a simple deposit? Just make sure to use that promo code LAFB or click the link below. The game is super easy. It's super fun. Pick 2 to 8 players in a game. Go ahead and go with the higher or lower, whether they're going to have more passing yards, touchdowns, receiving yards, rushing yards, any of that. It's a lot of fun. And just choose higher or lower. That's easy with the opportunity to win. So go to Underdog Fantasy today. Promo code LAFB gets you a free entry and up to a $1,000 bonus cash. I've been getting a lot more into recruiting. I think it's a fun thing to cover. It's a roller coaster ride for sure, especially in this day of NIL. But it's fun, and especially it's been more fun now this last kind of 6 months as USC and Lincoln Riley has really turned their focus back to California. We've talked about it ad nauseum. I don't need to bring it up again, but there is definitely a greater emphasis on California recruiting. You still have to recruit elsewhere. I don't care what anyone says. People out there like, oh yeah, just get California kids and you'll win. Like, yeah, that's a start. But there's still there's trench guys down in Georgia and Texas and Florida and New Orleans that are just built a little different than out here in California. Not to say there's not good trench players and offensive linemen, defensive linemen right here, and we're going to talk about a few of them. But you still have to recruit those other hotbeds of talent. But there's no reason year in and year out 60 to even 70% of your class shouldn't be Cali kids. And then fill the other 20, 30, maybe 40% with around the country. You still have to. I don't care what anyone says. But greater than 50% should be Cali kids because that's how good the talent is here. It's easier. You're USC, right? Like, as much as like me, I moved away. I wanted to move away. There's going to be kids. That's the one thing that people don't talk about is like there are going to be kids that just want to move away and don't want to stay home. There's going to be that. I wanted to. I was like, hey, Colorado's great. I love you, but I want to go somewhere that I haven't been, that I don't live at, that's somewhere new, a new experience. There's going to be kids like that. But there's also going to be a lot of kids that want to stay home, that want their entire families to be able to come to every single home game. They want to be able to go home for a home-cooked meal with ease. And so it's easier to do that. And when you look at this list on Junior Day, there are just blue chip prospects. There's also going to be some really highly touted 3-stars. There's also going to be some 2027 kids showing up. Just blue chip prospects. That's 4 and 5 stars. Let me count this up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 blue chippers visiting campus this weekend. Of the 12, 11 are California kids. Now, I will admit I was not as heavily involved with recruiting coverage even just 365 days ago. So last year's Junior Day, I can't say off the top of my head right now if there were this many Cali kids or if this is a change. But I'll just speak for now. I mean, that is a great sign. 11 of 12 blue chippers on campus are Cali kids. And 2 of them are committed. The other 10 are uncommitted still. So you could flip potentially 1 or 2, but also you have 10 kids that are just uncommitted. So I'll just quickly, these names might mean nothing to you, but I'll read through them really quick. Running back Deshaun Rideau, 4-star to Oaks Christian. Edge, and some of these names I'm going to butcher, I apologize. Edge Simote Kononga, 4-star out of J. Sarah. Offensive lineman Samuela Utu, 4-star out of Olu. 3 wide receivers visiting. Vance Spafford. I want to say Stafford, Matthew Stafford. Vance Spafford, 4-star to Mission Viejo. He is one of the ones committed. He's committed to Georgia currently. But I think USC will be pushing to flip him. Wide receiver Trent Mosley, 4-star to Santa Margarita. Wide receiver Caden Dixon Wyatt, 4-star out of Mater Dei. You also have tight end Mark Bowman, who just reclassified to the 2026 class. He's a 4-star to Mater Dei, and I think the top 3 tight end in the class, even after reclassifying. That's how good this kid is. And tight end Israel Briggs, 4-star out of Shoutout Redwood up in Visalia. My roommate in college for years, still one of my best friends, a groomsman at my wedding. He went to Redwood High School out in Visalia. And then a third tight end, Caleb Tafua, 4-star out of Lakewood. Another roommate of mine in college at Long Beach State technically went to Mayfair, but he's from Lakewood. He went to the other Lakewood High School in Mayfair. Tafua is committed to Texas A&M, so we'll see if Husan Longstreet, could maybe convince him to flip, as he was one that flipped from A&M as well. Cornerback Devon Benjamin, 4-star out of Oaks Christian. He has been trending heavily all recruiting process to commit to USC. With the corners that USC already has committed, along with Elbert Hill, the number 1 corner in the 2026 class that just visited last weekend and had a fantastic visit. We have an article up on LAFB Network you can check out all about that. And then with Devon Benjamin, I mean, this could end up being one of the best corner classes for the Trojans ever. If that's, if this all goes down with who they already have committed, and if they're able to get a Benjamin and or Elbert Hill. So Benjamin will be on campus. And linebacker Talanoa Ely, 4-star out of Lutheran High School. Only out-of-stater, like I mentioned, there's only one, linebacker Anthony Davis, who is from Georgia. So all of these kids wants to watch. Very important visits. It's a long process. This will be the first visit for some of them of many. This will be the second or third or fourth visit. Some have already been here many times, but obviously Junior Day is a very, very important weekend. Now, just as important as these new kids visiting and making an impression and showing what the university is all about, there's going to be kids that are actually committed visiting. And we saw last year. Now, I think some of the changes with the front office and having the GM and the NIL in better shape will change this, but we saw last year how hard it was to retain some of these blue chip prospects, even when they commit. I mean, the amount of, and we talked a lot about length, so I won't go into details really, but the number of players that were once committed to USC in the 2025 class that then decommitted or flipped, that alone was a top 20 recruiting class. When you think about the likes of all these, great guys from Georgia, all these just talented players, they were committed and flipped. And part of that was, NIL issues and contract negotiations. Part of that was, kids changed their minds and just decided, you know what, I actually feel like I want to go somewhere else or want to stay closer to the home. We know some of them were, the Justice Terrys of the world were from Georgia and maybe wanted to stay closer. Some of it were maybe using USC as leverage. Maybe they always wanted to go to an SEC school from their hometown and thought if they committed to SC, they could end up getting a bigger payday. And I'm sure it worked that way. So all that being said, we know it is a long haul to keep these kids from now, January 30th, until December 4th. Now, with these recent hires I just talked about at the top of the show on staff, I think they're going to alleviate that much, much better this year. And there'll still be some. It's going to happen, everyone. There will be kids that commit and decommit. That's the world we live in. But I think it'll be fewer gut punches, I'll say. And ones that do decommit, you'll say, you know what, okay, probably wasn't the right fit or whatever be the case. So I say all that because 6 of their 8 2026 current class, they are the number 2 class in the nation right now. They have 8 commits. 6 of those commitments will be here on this Junior Day. The only out-of-stater, linebacker Xavier Griffin, 4-star out of Gainesville, Georgia. One note on him, he's obviously one of the top linebackers in the entire country. Huge commitment for Lincoln Riley and USC. And the South for sure. He's from Georgia. We know how this goes with these Georgia kids. The SEC schools are going to be going after him hard for the next 11 months. It is going to be challenging for USC to keep Griffin. Now, he seems fully committed. His family seems fully committed. But we saw the same thing with Julian Lewis, right? And that started to kind of fade slowly and, different things happen. But one thing I will say that I thought was whether you call it funny, whatever, just this past weekend, Xavier Griffin posted pictures of other coaches that are visiting. It's going to happen, right? Like he's committed to SC, but they're going to try to pull him away. So visits from Mike Norvell from Florida State. Visits from Coach Laurinaitis from Ohio State. One other one that I'm forgetting, but he posted like 3 or 4 pictures of these coaches visiting. So these coaches are visiting him, and he and all of them is rocking a USC shirt. Love that. Like, you're not going to say no. Come visit, coax me, but showing his commitment by rocking a USC shirt while Ohio State is visiting him, while Florida State is visiting him, that was super cool. Love that. So Griffin will be there. Cornerback R.J. Sermons, 4-star, Rancho Cucamonga. Cornerback Brandon Larkhart, 4-star Loyola. Athlete Joshua Holland, 3-star at Bosco. Athlete Madden Reorden, I've already been talking too long, 3-star to Sierra Canyon. And wide receiver Jamiron Baker, 3-star out of Sierra Canyon. So all of these big-time commitments, local kids outside of Griffin, all of these need to be retained. And so this is another opportunity this weekend to show kind of the staff improvements, but also just keep these kids fired up about soon to be playing football for the USC Trojans. So big weekend, big opportunity for this staff to really shine. And, I would not be surprised, like I said, if we see 1 or 2 or maybe 3 commitments after this weekend. I think there's a big opportunity for that. If none do come through, that doesn't mean it went bad. It's so early. It's January, soon to be February. When the Trojans really started getting commitments last year was around, I want to say March, into February, March is when they started getting commitments for the 2025 class and started running that out. And they're already at 8 for 26. So don't be nervous if no commitments happen this weekend, but also don't be surprised if some do happen, because I think there will be some, personally. But yeah, that's it. I already talked too long. Thank you all for hanging out with me. Hopefully I could provide you good info. All of this info is always on LAFBnetwork.com. Like, I try to write as much as possible, get up there. So we have all the info there, but obviously USC LAFB on the channel is where we get all of our shows and video content. So if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. But USC just crushing the game. I mean, crushing it right now. It's not the season. You got to go win on the gridiron. But for the off season, this is about as good as it could have gotten after a disappointing 2024 season. And even early signing day, that had its ups and downs, right? Jakeem Stewart was the big win. You lost Jadon Perlott. You lose your linebacker coach, Matt Entz, on early signing day. But you've in that day feeling pretty good about your class. Since that moment, it has been nothing but wins for the program in terms of the staff hires, in terms of retaining Danton Lynn, adding Rob Ryan, adding these other coaches, Chad Savage, who I think is going to be one of the most underrated coaches added as a tight end coach and another elite recruiter. So stacking wins. Let's see if they can keep it up. Let's have a great weekend. Thank you all for hanging out with me. As always, I'm Ryan Dowd, USC LAFB. We are out. We'll talk to you all next week.